After a great time at the Tahoe Pizza Company, we wandered back to the Tahoe Valley campground. The RV park is visited by bears every night, but I was dead to the world and slept right through the visitation. The next morning, Magic Hobbit got a ride to a nearby Trail Angels place. Nate and Peter were settling in for a long series of zeros at the RV park. Nate's phone hadn't arrived yet, and it didn't look like it was going to show up anytime soon. I decided I needed to go home. I was just 3 hours from home by car, but I didn't have a car. After taking a shower and doing my laundry at the RV park, I figured out how to get home. It would take a couple of buses and a train ride, but I'd get there before sunset. I transferred from a bus to a train in Sacramento. At the Sacramento train station, I ran into another guy carrying a backpack with a PCD placard on it. He was done. The snow in the Sierras was too much for him. When I told him I was just taking a few zeros to get over my cold, he became disinterested in our conversation. Perhaps he didn't want my cold, or he was only interested in commiserating with someone in the same situation. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law picked me up at the Martinez train station and delivered me home. Thanks, Randy and Lisa. I laid in bed for the next 2 days straight. I had to go back to the train station to pick up my sons. They were done visiting my father. Back at the train station only 3 days later, I felt better, but I had a nasty cough that would linger on for weeks. The next day was my birthday, and Dawson drove me back to Tahoe. Nate's phone was taking forever, so he was still in Tahoe. Peter had left the morning before. Dawson and I explored the Tahoe area during the day. Nate and Dawson helped me celebrate my birthday back at Tahoe Pizza Company that night. A funny aside, when Peter was waiting for a ride to take him back to the trail, he set down his very expensive camera and forgot it. He contacted Nate from the trail, and Nate went looking for it. All he found was a cardboard sign stating someone had found the camera and was looking for a finder's fee. So Peter had to take a side trail back to the road, catch a ride, pay for his camera, and then get another ride back to that same side trail. He did all this in just one day. He still managed to get around 10 miles that day. Man, that was dedication. It was nice to see him briefly after he got his camera. Nate was pretty confident his new phone would arrive the next day. I wasn't feeling 100%, so I decided one more night in a warm bed was in order. So that night I got a hotel room. Instead of staying the night, Dawson drove home. We got a late start the next day. Nate needed to get his phone from the post office and, of course, set it up. While I was waiting for Nate to get back, I hung out with Skriegel and German Cowboy at the RV park. An Uber dropped us off back on Highway 50 around 2:30. We'd only get 10 miles that first day. First off, we'd had to get to Echo Lake and travel its length. After the lake, we started to gain elevation and, of course, ran into snow. We ran into the first person to tell us we were entering a heat wave. It was weird to be surrounded by snow and talking about a heat wave. I've been on this stretch of trail a couple times before. It looked very different this time. Aloha Lake was spectacular. For the first time visiting it, I didn't go swimming. Next we passed Heather Lake. The traverse was very scary. A fall into the water would be bad news. We spent our first and only night in Desolation Wilderness at Susie Lake. It was cold because of the large body of water, but the view was amazing. We hiked until late, so I was surprised when Nate took off early the next morning. I wasn't ready to go when he was. It was a real possibility I would never see him again, but I caught up to him at Dick's Pass. Dick's Pass is significant to me because I led a Boy Scout trek over Dick's Pass a few years earlier. At Dick's Pass, the boys got cell service. One of the boys was having trouble, but I didn't realize it. I heard his half of the conversation with his mother. Apparently, I was a grueling taskmaster, and he regretted coming on the outing. Similarly, Nate also got signal at the pass. He was messing with his phone and waiting for me when I arrived. Here we experienced one of the first, is it a creek or is it a trail moments. With the snow melting so fast, often we were walking right down the middle of a creek. We'd often refer to the trail as the PCS, or the Pacific Crest Stream. At one point we checked to see how far we were off from the snow-covered trail, only to discover we were standing on a snow-covered frozen pond. Man, we got off that pond fast. I've never seen a frog hopping on snow before. Nate wanted to get up early, and this time I was ready. We broke camp and were on our way by 5:30. It was a frustrating day. We were putting in maximum effort, but just didn't seem to get anywhere. The snow was a challenge, as were the many water crossings. As noted, much of the time we traveled over snow-covered ground, so we had no idea if we were on the trail. So often we just cut across the woods to save time. One of our roadblocks was at mile 1130. We just climbed a difficult grade. The trail made a 90-degree turn to the shady side of the mountain and ended into a wall of ice. We were at a loss as to what to do next. We probably spent 20 minutes catastrophizing, as Nate would later describe it, before finding a simple solution. We went way off trail, down a hill, then back up to rejoin the trail after the dangerous bit was over. Here I got a rare shot of Nate glissading. Since his rain pants were ruined, as noted in the last video, he had to slide in his shorts. We passed the last official camping spot to get more mileage. As the sun set, I was pointing out every semi-flat spot as a possible campsite, even if it was small and rocky. Nate would just dismiss them. If I could, I would call my mom and complain about the grueling taskmaster. It was late dusk with a tricky traverse ahead of us when I saw another potential campsite. Surprisingly, Nate was okay with stopping, which is good. Tired as I was, it would have been a bad idea to make that traverse just past our camp. During the night, we were passed by another group, Jackpot, Pizza, and Stitches. They stayed at a ski lift shed straight up the hill from us. I spoke to Jackpot, a Frenchman, briefly. He wanted to know if his friend Pizza had come by. We traveled pretty fast the next day. We ran into Pizza at one point, and he told us about free 40-ouncers at the Donnor ski ranch. They also had a bunkhouse so we could sleep on beds. I sent a message to Dawson to meet us. It was hard to estimate our arrival time. I was really looking forward to seeing him and for the resupply. We passed 3 ski resorts that day. The diciest stretch was coming down from the ridge into the main bowl at the ski resort that used to be called Squaw Valley. Now it's simply called the Palisades. We saw Stitches under these ski lifts before making a series of glissades to reach the bottom of the bowl. At one point, we saw Stitches way up on the bowl. She was probably trying to stay on the trail. She must have slipped and had a long and scary self-arrest. After that, she glissaded the rest of the way to the bottom of the bowl to avoid the traverse. After the Palisades, we made a climb up to a ridge that would bring us to Mount Lincoln at the backside of Sugar Bowl, which is another ski resort. We made good time despite the wind because the ridge was snow-free. I was ahead at this stretch and came to a traverse that looked really bad. I had rested and just put on my microspikes when Nate rolled up. He looked at me like I was an idiot. The traverse was way too steep. We could avoid it by simply climbing up to the top of Mount Lincoln. Coming down from Mount Lincoln called for boot sliding. Magic Hobbit and Nate were pros at it. Where I would glissade, they'd simply slide down the mountain on the heels of their boots. I never mastered the skill, but here I am practicing. With my limited geology knowledge, I spotted these cool concretions. After Mount Lincoln, it was all downhill Donnor Pass. We met Dawson at Summit House. We'd eaten at the restaurant during a Boy Scout outing, so I thought it would be a good place to reconnect. Unfortunately, it was closed, and Dawson didn't even remember the place. Dawson drove us up to Donnor Ski Ranch for a great meal and, of course, the free 40s. Nate, Dawson, and I ate with Jackpot, Pizza, and Stitches. Dawson ordered a French dip. It was interesting trying to explain why it's called a French dip to a Frenchman. I convinced Dawson to stay the night. So the 6 of us shared the bunkhouse. Dawson enjoyed a glimpse into the dirtbag lifestyle. He watched TV with the guys while I did my town chores, laundry, shower, dishes. In the morning, we had a great breakfast while the other guys slept in. Trail stop checklist. Lake, check. Donnor Pass, check.